For more on the story, we are joined by Advocate Mpilonhle Baloyi, who is a legal expert. Advocate, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this evening. So the state has fielded their first witness. From a legal perspective, how strong do you find the state's case to be against Zuma-Sambudla?
Well, good evening and thank you for having me. It was an interesting morning following these proceedings. And to answer your question on the strength of the state's case, it's a difficult one to speculate at this stage, and it will mostly, in my view, be dependent on the balance of the witnesses and the evidence that they have. But what's very notable and what we will have to keep in mind is that the standard of beyond a reasonable doubt is a very high standard. And at this stage, given today's witness, there's not much to be desired on the part of the state.
I mean, speaking on that, to what extent does political influence interfere with judicial independence in high-profile cases such as this?
You know, it should not be. And if we are going to look at that in light of the current national climate on the implications of judiciary, political interferences, etc., it should not be the case. These matters should be brought to court on their own merit and in the absence of any other influences.
You spoke earlier about the standard of beyond reasonable doubt being a very high standard. What legal standards would be applied when evaluating social media posts as evidence of incitement or inciting violence, like it is in this case?
You know, you will note from the prosecution's opening remarks, and they went to great lengths in their preamble, indicating that, look, this is a peculiar case. It's not ordinary that somebody would be charged of a matter such as this. And what they are relying on, or what they intend to prove at the end, is the power of words, especially the words of an influential person. And at the end of the day, wanting to convince the court that the words uttered by Duduzile Zuma-Sambudla amounted to incitement to commit public violence as well as terrorism. And the general, in his testimony, classified these two categories of evidence that they're relying on: the WhatsApp groups as well as the tweets. But during cross-examination, when Advocate Mpofu took him to town on the issues, you could hear that the WhatsApp evidential value is quite low compared to the tweets. And also, as to now the interpretation of the exact words that were tweeted, there was no direct answer as to would this really amount to an incitement. And we saw that altercation even between the State's Council and Advocate Mpofu, when the State's Council objected and said he's not following the line of question, etc. But it was brought back to saying, let's analyze the statement of the general, and as per his witness statement and the words that he would interpret as incitement to violence. And so far, my view is that there is nothing in today's witness that really pins a particular commission of a crime to Ms. Duduzile Zuma-Sambudla.
And you did say, I mean, it's still quite early days. And I mean, we are speaking, you mentioned those WhatsApps, that 163 WhatsApps that were brought into question today. But just given the reliance on social media expert testimonies, what are the complexities involved in digital evidence?
You know, those complexities are difficult because there is no direct evidence, and it's difficult to attribute a particular occurrence to a particular person. Like in this instance, Advocate Mpofu kept making explanations. If I say this and this, does it mean I have incited? And most of the answers were no. So in meeting the standard of beyond reasonable doubt, it's going to be very difficult. Remember, we're dealing here with crimes of the internet. It's not like catching somebody red-handed committing a particular crime or an offense, but the interpretation of words which are uttered online and the influence that they are likely to have on people. Are people going to react to your words? Are people going to do what they did? So are the July unrests as a direct consequence of a tweet? Did those words really send people out to go commit what they committed during the July unrest? So it's very difficult.
Would cases such as the kill the farmer, kill the Boer enchantment set a precedence for a case such as this?
They would. But I think we should compare apples with apples. But like that one, remember it was figures of speech which were in interpretation there. And not to say let's go out and do this, but that was the interpretation of equage or chance, etc. And that's the line of thinking that the court followed. But in this particular instance, where there was direct action after certain words were uttered, what the state is struggling to do is to establish a nexus, a proper connection between the words and the words that were uttered and the actions that were committed, to say were they as a direct result of this. And going back to kill the farmer, kill the Boer, after that song was chanted, we did not see people going to kill farmers and the Boers.
So from the defense's strategy that you would foresee them deploying, what would it be, considering that Zuma-Sambudla is making claims of political victimization?
You know, towards the end of the testimony, you Advocate Bofu did ask, like, let's go to the genesis of this matter, and the lady from Paul O'Sullivan's office as a complainant, and I'm sure more of that will come tomorrow as she takes the stand, and I do hope that in cross-examination the defense really tries to break down and tries to get to that point, because as part of the defense and what they're raising is that there is that political interference. These charges are politically motivated. So we should expect that the defense should go all out in proving that particular allegation.
And just finally, Advocate, how might the outcome of this trial influence social media use and possibly social media cases in the future in South Africa?
It should be in a position to set a precedent, but objectively speaking, it might not be the best case. But looking at cyber law in general, to say people should be aware and woke on what they post on social media, the influence thereof, things like it could develop things like the Poppy Act, anything with internet usage could be developed. But on this particular case, my own feel of it is that it will not set much of a precedent.
All right. Advocate Mpilonhle Baloyi, thank you so much for your time this evening, giving us insights into the Zuma-Sambudla case, which relates to the 2021 July unrest incitement. We'll have more news after the break, so do stay with us.